All right, welcome back from the coffee break. Pat and I are here with Hash as we were before, and anyway, we got as Pat said, we have some not just good questions, but questions. So
True.
So Hash, I guess one thing we wanted to kind of ask is there anything that doesn't necessarily fit in on your YouTube channel that maybe you'd want to talk about, tell the world about, or what have you?
Yeah, I would say that I've kept YouTube very focused, especially recently on smart meters and this journey of reverse engineering smart meters and all the different things I'm trying. If you look at my early days YouTube stuff, some of it was amateur radio related. It's still on the reverse engineering or that kind of side, but it quickly moved into smart meters and stayed there. But a lot of the things I work on, like all of these things, it's not that I had some crazy inherent interest in smart meters. It was just a thing that allowed me to learn about a lot of different topics that I enjoy. So I've always wanted to be able to be kind of like a master of software-defined radio. But I feel like for me, I need a project to drive the mastery. So I might sit around and learn about software-defined radio, but ultimately, what is it you're trying to do? So receiving all this frequency hopping data really drove me. And then I might want to learn how to dump firmware from a microchip, but which microchip and why? And maybe you pick an easy one. When it's in a certain device, well, then you're kind of constrained of, okay, I have to figure out how to dump this one. I can't just pick an easy target or something. Sure. The learning is what has driven it. So I would say I'm also incredibly interested in reverse engineering silicon. So, all the way down from early days when you had smart cards and satellite TV, and people would work on, hacking satellite TV and stuff like that, and how that would be done, and how people would initially get data from those smart cards, and people that specifically reverse engineer silicon to look at the silicon, dump out ROM images, or use incredibly tiny probes to actually touch data lines on the silicon while the chip is running to read out data from the bus of the chip.
And so the tools that are used the chip, not just the
inside
pin,
the chip,
but you take
not
the
the
lid
pins
off
of the chip,
chip,
but I'm talking, using nitric acid and sulfuric acid like I got in the garage to decap the chip, to get to the silicon itself, the place where you can't keep any more secrets, right? Once you're at the silicon level, there is no secrets anymore, right?
So how small are these probes? Because you hear about silicon being in the nanometers thickness or whatever. How do you even do that? That seems
So the probes, these tiny little hair. Hair is way larger than what the size of these probes are. They're touching stuff that's on the 40 nanometer scale, the process to make some of these chips. So they're able to actually reach in and touch on there. So there's a couple tools that have really interested me that I've been shopping the last so many years kind of quietly, and that's a scanning electron microscope and a focused ion beam workstation. So and one's an order of magnitude. That sounds really exotic. Yeah, it's super esoteric, and if your neighbors saw it in the garage, they probably call somebody on you. But they allow you to look at essentially the silicon level. And so when you look at the analysis, there's kind of different layers of analysis you could do with something. So you could think, okay, we're going to look at an app that runs on a phone. So it'd be an app analysis. And then you could say, okay, we're going to look at the operating system that runs on a phone. So you're coming down a level. Then you could say, okay, we're going to look at the firmware that's running on the processor before it runs the operating system. And that's down a level. And maybe you're doing some circuit board analysis, and that's around that level. And then you would say, I'm going to look at the actual silicon on the chip in the phone that's running the things. And at that point, you're kind of at the lowest possible level you can get to inside of a device, where no matter where someone's trying to keep secrets or keys hidden or things like that, it's once you get down to that level, there's just nowhere left to hide something. You pulled all the clothes back and you're just looking at the thing the way it is.
So you're actually looking at the gates and stuff, the transistors inside a chip. Because when you say that, you say it's physical probes. Or you said it's...
So you'd have to look at pictures of them. So they'll have these tiny, it'll be like a bed that you'd have the chip on, and these kind of probe manipulators, and they have these little knobs on them, and so you're moving things at the micron scale
like
of how you're trying to position, almost like an Etch-a-Sketch.
You're doing
that
the
you would move.
Etch-a-Sketch and everything there. It's fantastic.
That's it,
that's
but
true.
with a chip, right?
Yeah.
So depending on what it is, so there's decapping a chip and trying to actually look at it, get an understanding of how things are structured. I mean, if you've looked at a circuit board, you know kind of there's parts on the circuit board and there's all the little traces that are routed that connect everything up. Silicon's really the same, it's just at a much smaller level. So you'd see different sections of the silicon, you see all the little kind of traces that are running and routing things together, and all that. It's just obviously much, much tinier. So like over here, I have like a regular microscope. This is a metallurgical microscope that I kind of rotated my computer to. And so that, when I decap a chip, lets you go down and look at it about 100x and see the features, that are on the silicon and everything, to try to, like, say a chip isn't labeled. And so you want to figure out what it is. You decap it, you look at the silicon, and a lot of times they'll put a part number on the silicon because everything needs a part number somewhere, for keeping track and all these things. And so that's one way to do an initial analysis. And then as you kind of zoom in further, like as stuff gets smaller or you really want to understand it, that's where things like a scanning electron microscope come into play.
And when you say decap it, basically you're taking the outer protective layer off of it, so you can see the innards, like silicon.
Yeah, so a microchip is basically like, any chip like that. It's basically a little wafer of silicon, and then because that's super sensitive, they have to put it into a package of some kind. And the package is usually what you think of when you see the microchip, the little black square with the leads coming out of all the sides. That's a carrier for the silicon. So inside of that, if you can dissolve away that, it's usually an epoxy type structure that makes up the chip itself. If you can dissolve that away, inside is the silicon. And then once you dissolve it away, you can look at the silicon and get an idea for how it's structured. Maybe it has a ROM section that's hard coded into it. It's boot up memory or something else. And so a lot of times you can find stuff online of people that you can actually look at that under a microscope if it's a hard coded ROM and literally read out the ones and zeros.
Really?
And put back together what the boot code might be. Yeah.
Really? That's amazing. It's interesting how deep this kind of thing goes.
So the rabbit hole goes way down, right? And so part of it is I've shopped for electron microscopes. There's a guy that's in Europe somewhere right now. He had a Hackaday page. He's actually trying to build his own scanning electron microscope from scratch. That's interesting to me because I have a lot of machine tools in the garage. I have milling machines and lathes and welders and all these things. And so I also enjoy the metalworking aspect of stuff and the precision of, clock making I've dabbled in and stuff like that. So,
well, let me ask you this. I learn stuff. I keep learning stuff, and I always feel like I'm not. I always feel like I know what I'm doing, even though like logically I know more than I did 5 years ago. You know what I mean? Do you
supposedly?
Supposedly. Now, Hash, do you feel you seem like you know what you're doing? Do you ever feel like you've mastered your craft, or you feel like you're still a beginner?
I frequently feel like I don't know what I'm doing, and maybe I'm not smart enough to do what I'm trying to do. I've just learned that I probably shouldn't think about myself that way, and that I do make progress. So for a long time, my mental kind of operating system was to beat myself up to the point of, you better figure this out or people will know you're a dumb. Right? So that was my mental operating system. And at some point I realized that's probably not super productive. Maybe I should cheer myself on instead of beat myself with a whip, because in the end I do figure it out. So am I going to be in agony the whole process, or could perhaps I enjoy the journey, because the end of the journey is such a small piece that if your satisfaction only comes from the end of the journey, it's going to be pretty rough, right? So I definitely don't feel that I know. I always go into things. Now I go into things and I just know if I do it long enough, I'll figure it out. So the question is,
that's true.
Do I want to commit to doing it? That's really the only question. because it will be figured out. It's only a matter of time. So am I willing to grind it out as long as it takes to figure it out, right? And so I don't really question anymore whether I'll figure things out. I just really question at the start, do I want to potentially invest 2 years? Because once I start doing it, my brain doesn't want to let me stop. So am I willing? So I should either never start, or if I do, I'm just really in it for the long haul, So that it's kind of, I guess, just learning about yourself,
Right. I mean, yeah, you hear about some of the, I'm thinking like Newton and Einstein, just basically having to invent whole new methods of, they're trying to figure certain things out, but they had to go through this process of inventing basically new mathematical models. Of it's mind blowing. And, you wonder if those people ever thought they were, maybe they thought the same thing. Maybe they never came to the conclusion that you have, that you're figuring it out.
I think maybe you start with, I start with the premise that someone could figure it out. And so if someone could figure it out, then why not me?
Exactly.
Right? And so,
absolutely.
And then it's a matter of time, and also can you rally other people to maybe come help out?
Yeah.
Because other people might have different ways of looking at it. So a lot of the YouTube stuff and things I do is try to say, hey, this could be fun. I know smart meters seem maybe like they're this boring thing, but they're actually pretty interesting. They could be fun. It's a fun project. You'll learn a lot along the way, and you can apply that to other things you do. So, it's not that it's very domain specific. It really does transfer across as you learn more stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
And so the more people that join in, the more of a chance you have of figuring it out and learning new things and meeting interesting people, right?
Sure. I work, I guess I still am an engineer. I got a job as an engineer, and I feel like you do that and people look at you as an engineer, they think this guy should know what he's doing. But you get to a situation you almost never know what you're doing, but you do have the ability to figure it out. I think that's I don't know.
Well, I would say I feel like it's a function of getting older and also getting more experience. Like the more you learn, the more you realize like that you don't know. And you also know of all the amount of edge cases that open up to you only expand over time because you've seen more and more throughout life. So it's like, when somebody asks you something that the answer usually isn't simple and that there's probably a lot of analysis and complexities and things that could be there. But to your point, you also know that you can figure it out. Like you are capable and you have a way of doing it, but it is complex and everything, right?
Maybe that's, people maybe think you learn stuff with experience, but maybe it's more, I don't know, maybe it's something a little bit different. You learn that you have more confidence in your ability to figure it out, even if maybe you don't know, still don't know what you're doing. You just know that you can know it at some point. I don't know.
And that's the same thing. I mean, with a lot of these, the stuff I've started with, even like I always wanted to kind of really learn C++ and these other things, and those I think are all achievable kinds of things. Like it's just a matter of putting in the time and doing it and slogging through the tough parts and setting goals and stuff like that. And so I think it's like that with any of this stuff. If you want to learn any kind of new skill, it's just a matter of structuring it and doing it and telling yourself like at the start that, you can, like, that's just my view. Like if anyone else can do something, then I don't think there's a reason that we can't do it. We just have to decide that we're going to do it and how hard we're going to push and how much we're going to work on it and what we're going to consider an acceptable level, to get to. And then you go do it.
Sure.
And when you say we, that's not just the three of us. That's everybody listening too.
That's all the listeners too.
Group.
Yeah.
Everyone. Yeah. We can.
Yeah.
So all of us can
pass it on to somebody else so they can do it.
Yeah.
Too.
No, that's the best way. That's the best way to learn this stuff. Somebody else.
Have somebody else learn it for me.
But I think it's too like kind of a I don't know, and I'm not really good at this, but maybe you got to make your choices as to what you're going to learn because you've only got so much time. I want to learn everything, but you can't do that, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah,
that's the way it is.
I would say that's probably my number one struggle. It's like when I was a kid, I had time and no money. Now I have money and less time, and so all the things that I wanted to buy and learn about, I can buy now, but then do I have enough time to really dive into them and learn about what it is? So I have kind of a number of different hobbies and interests, from metalworking to this scanning electron microscope stuff to hardware, to want to learn more about software, to software-defined radio and RF stuff. And so I kind of just cycle around in those hobbies almost, in those interests. So I'll dive deep into maybe machining for a while, and then I'll move over and I'll come over back to circuit analysis or something, and then I'll push back into software-defined radio, and so I try to keep it focused. Like on the smart meter stuff, I've tried to keep all those interests focused into this one thing, so I can make a lot of progress on it. But it is a challenge, because there's when you find everything in the world interesting to learn about, you just don't have the time to do all of it, right? Even if you didn't have a job, even if you could just do it 100% of the time, there's only so much time, right?
Yep.
What do you think, Pat? You
True.
think that's accurate?
I do think it's accurate. I still, even though I don't go to a day job, I still only have so much time. But I have less money because of that too. So I can't just go out and buy everything either. I have to, make those choices.
Constraints are good though,
Yeah. I work for myself, and I guess I thought I would have more time, and it's a weird thing, because on the one hand, I can take an afternoon off to do, if a friend was in town yesterday, I spent, a couple hours with him, whatever. I couldn't just do that at a regular job, but at the same time, I work a lot, probably more than I did when I had a regular job. You do the best you can, I guess. So.
It's all you can do, Jeremy.
Yeah.
It's the best you can. Do your best.
Yeah. But yeah, it sounds like you've managed to keep a job that we can't talk about, and do some really, really amazing hobbies. I mean, it's awesome how much you've been able to.
Yeah, I think the nights and weekends and the other time, if you can structure it in a way where you can make a bit of progress and it keeps becoming additive, then it's pretty good. Like a lot of my early struggles would be, I'd want to work on something for hours and hours and hours and kind of get in the zone and just let it run as long as possible. And the reality is, with like work and a family and all these things, like too many other people have to pay the price for you to kind of be able to get in that zone and do that. So what I've realized over time is that I have to structure what I do and chunk it more so that I can advance a bit and get the sense of accomplishment of having had a little time in advance without everyone else having to pay the price for whatever this thing is I'm doing, which in the grand scheme of things probably isn't super important. It's like if you're on your deathbed and your family's left you're probably not going to be super stoked that you reverse engineered smart meters, so it's like you do kind of have to keep things contained, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, if you can make that small progress, I think then over time, what you see, a lot of the stuff I'm doing, people will say like, must be nice to just be able to work on this all the time and all this stuff. I get comments of people saying that. The reality is, like, when you look at something over the span of a few years, if you just make a little progress every single week, in a few years, you can't even imagine where you'll be if you're doing it. And that's what a lot of this stuff is. It's like, looking at it now, it's like, it seems super in depth and all this stuff that's been done. And it's really just a little bit of progress over years,
Well, that's true. Well, listen, we really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today. That's really awesome. I mean,
Yeah,
we're all busy
on a smart meter right now.
Yeah.
And you're talking
you just
to us
delayed the
instead.
next episode on the YouTube channel by at least an hour.
Yeah, at least.
Well,
Goodness.
but yeah, we really appreciate. Is there anything else you want to tell us about before we close the podcast out?
I just encourage people to check out the YouTube channel, leave comments and feedback. It's the Recessim channel on YouTube.
And that's spelled RECESSIM. Is that right?
Correct.
So
yep. And so you'll see it if you search smart meters on YouTube. I think it's probably the first thing that's going to come up. It's kind of like the way I run it is a choose your adventure story. So everything you see up until now that's been posted, it's kind of where I am. And what I talk about in the next video, I'm going to try to figure out and do for the next video. So it's not a scripted 20-part series, and I already know what the conclusion is. Like, if I say we're going to try to hack something for the next video, like, I'm literally going to go try to see if I can figure it out for the next video. Like, it's unknown, and the comments people leave, I let it drive the direction I go and what I ultimately do.
Yeah,
Well,
you seem to be doing a very good
awesome.
job, and YouTube seems to think you're doing a good job at it too. As far as I can tell, your subscriber count is growing nicely. You're doing a good job.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Nice. And Pat, where can we find you if we wanted to find you?
Oh, why would anybody want to find me, Jeremy? I'm at patshead.com, and I have a YouTube channel, but I hardly ever post anything there. So, but you can find all my stuff at patshead.com. How about you, Jeremy? Where can we find you?
Well, I've got a website as well, jeremyscook.com, or I'm on Twitter at jeremyscook. And if you Google Jeremy S. Cook, I think I should come up. But you know, I'm around. So, but yeah. Well, Hash, we really appreciate it. We enjoyed talking about everything with you, and yeah. I guess,
yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah,
I enjoyed being on it and just chatting about all kinds of interests, and hopefully some of them are interesting to people.
Yeah. All right, we'll see you later.
See you later, everybody.
Bye now.
I enjoyed when it got to the silicon delidding stuff. The faces you were making, it was fantastic. It was absolutely fantastic. It was like, this is exciting. Jeremy was like, this is really cool. I had no idea you could do this.
I hope it didn't look like I was being sarcastic.
No, I'm exaggerating. It wasn't quite what I did, but ow, it just hit my elbow right on the thing there. I'll be okay.